welcome to the Bridge to You podcast, hosted by yours truly, Monique Russell, where we focus on promoting Black unity worldwide through conversations that help us understand ourselves and each other. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bridge to You podcast. I am your host, Monique Russell. And today, in my guest chair, I have the pleasure and honor to be interviewing none other than Mr. Kelly Blackmon. Kelly is an author. He's the founder of B Consulting. He's a business and career coach whose life passion is really to help you figure out your roadmap to yourself, your roadmap for success, your roadmap for life. He also hosts a live social media LinkedIn show, How to Win at Everything. He's a TED Circle presenter, and he stepped into entrepreneurship not so much intentionally, but accidentally, and his passion took off. Kelly, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Hey, Monique, and hey, everybody. It's good to be here. It's good to be here. Obviously followed you for a while, so it is a great situation anytime I can be having a face-to-face with you virtually.
Yes. Well, Kelly, I always like to start off my interviews with this question because a lot of my guests are travelers. And if you could choose anywhere in the world where you would want to be right now, where would you choose and why?
Ooh, that is a good one. We actually, the family and I had a cruise planned for actually this month to go to Greece and the Mediterranean. I would love to be there right now. Like, haven't been before, but man, it's like the stuff I've seen has been so beautiful. Know some people over there. Yeah, that would have been my place right now.
Well, I will tell you, I have never been to Greece and it's on my list too. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
definitely anywhere I think right now would be a
Yeah.
welcome journey.
Going anywhere is, yeah.
Anywhere. So Kelly, one of the things that I really was intrigued about when we first started talking was your whole development upbringing. You studied psychology
Mm-hmm.
and you are very in tune with your emotions, your feelings. And, as a Black man, they say, what, the Black man is
Yeah.
not in tune with his feelings and emotions, but you getting in touch with your inner child was not something that's foreign to you. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what was that like for you? How did you become
Well,
so in tune with the inner child?
see, now that's an interesting thing because for me, now first off, I don't think people in general are very in tune with themselves, period. But obviously, it is a case that as a black male, it is almost pushed upon us to have this machismo and this bravado and this sense. And if I'm just being honest, I do think that part of the issue is when you've been enslaved and you've had your manhood be something that's been questioned and taken and that sort of thing. I think it does play a big part in how we behave. So for me, I think a lot of my journey has come from really honestly looking at black men in general. When I was growing up, I remember my dad, and my uncle, I had to be like 5, 6 years old, and they're like, best thing you can do, boy, get you a girlfriend. And if you're doing good, get you several girlfriends. And this is what I'm getting taught. And I think when I look back upon those people, especially when I got into studying God, when I got into studying really just human behavior, you start to see where some of that stuff comes from. And in all honesty, it really made me start thinking this is a big reason for why we have a lot of the issues we have today, where people are looking like, I don't necessarily fit into this or that. I have to go to this extreme. So for me, when I really start looking at it, I'm thinking, what feels right morally, ethically? How am I going to be when it comes to my relationship with other people, other black people, when it comes to my wife, when it comes to my kid, my mother, my sister, and trying to be that thing that I wanted for them, for everyone else.
Mm. You know what? That you said something really interesting there that's going to pique my next question. And because when you talked about the influence of your dad and your uncle and how they shaped really a lot of some of the beliefs in terms of growing up and what to do and what to expect, that whole journey
Hmm.
of what it means to be a Black man, or how do you
Hmm.
show up and how do you demonstrate your manhood,
Yep.
and then even moving into connecting with other Black people. What were some of the things that you heard growing up or you were exposed to growing up about other Black cultures?
uh, well, so I don't know if this was just we were in the projects, and I know that this is a huge thing, and I don't know how widespread this was because the projects is like almost like its own little separate world. But one of the worst things you could be called was an African booty scratcher. It would be the case that if you were told that, oh well, you're an African, and this was a very negative thing. There were literally like 3 paragraphs in my history book in 8th grade about Black people, about Black history, about Africa, and it was basically something along the lines that we were savages, we were slaves, now we're here. And I think that lack of definition really put some angst between American Blacks and Black folks around the diaspora, as well as it being a case that for us there's a real huge lack of. I mean, if you think about it, our culture is honestly 400 years old. Because we don't really have a full culture. So at this point, I feel like Black men are learning to be Black men. Black women are learning to be Black women. We're learning to, I mean, considering the fact that for all of slavery, we have Black families who are separated and pulled apart. We're just now learning how to be family. It was just in my era, um, public aid was still saying you couldn't have a man in the house and still receive food stamps. So it's only been the last probably 40 years, 30 years maybe, where you've had a situation where Black families were allowed to actually be together. So in that sense, I feel like it's a learning curve, and right now we're still trying to come to some sort of semblance of what it really means to be Black and a Black man and a Black woman and Black family.
Mm. I love that aspect on education and learning and just learning a new way of
Mhm.
being, because especially when you point out the fact that you didn't have that definition or that
Mhm.
understanding, or even the
Mhm.
learning that you had was with 3 paragraphs. Three
Yeah.
paragraphs, come on, seriously, in the high school book, and I could even think back to when I was growing up in the islands and
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
history and the learning about, what African American people have gone through. It was very limited.
Yeah.
So when you talk about growing up in the projects and the worst thing you could call somebody was an African booty scratcher, I mean, what was that all about? What you laughing at, Kelly? What was that all about?
That
What did that mean?
honestly, I do not know what it meant because there was the connotation of you putting African on it meant it was bad, and
Mm-hmm.
this is across the board. African was bad, and the only thing that we understood about Africa is kind of, I guess, what we were taught, that it was underdeveloped. It was a place where there's a lot of the most the probably the biggest thing I had as far as understanding anything about Africa outside of our insults to each other was probably National Geographic.
Mm.
And as a kid, you're looking through the National Geographic, you're not reading articles. You're like, that tribe has no shirts. And that is the upside. And that's pretty much it. Like, you really didn't know anything about Africa, about Africans, and definitely not about our connection to this place.
That's what I love so much about this show, Bridge to You, because even in our limitations of awareness and
Hmm.
understanding, for some reason, some way, somehow, we found a way to get more awareness, to get more knowledge, and to
Hmm.
facilitate that connection. You and I actually met in the Professionally Black
Yep.
forum
Yep.
on LinkedIn. And my question to you now is, given that you started off with a very limited understanding
Hmm.
of Africa, Africans, what it meant, and the connection, what was that journey like for you to go from not having clarity or understanding to now being an advocate, a champion, someone who practices Black cultural connection? How did you
Well,
get this way?
see, now that's for me, it's an interesting journey because um, we started off celebrating Christmas. We started off with pretty much being very Americanized, right? Like there's there's all of the stuff that we do that represents this Anglo-American culture, and it was all cool until probably like 87, 88, and my dad was the one he discovered like black nationalism, right? So he had me read Malcolm X's autobiography, and man, I was charged up. I thought white people were the devil. You know, you could see all of these bad things that came from European culture, and then it's like, yeah, I was in. So every week we'd be at some nationalist meeting, and most of it wasn't militant. Most of it was really more about Afro-centric education and learning your culture. But that all really was a jumping off spot for me to really get a better understanding of uh, not only Black folks in America, but African culture worldwide. Like where Black people have been, where the Moors were, you know, in Sicily and in the Philippines and that sort of thing. And really to learn about the history, it obviously changed the trajectory for me. So I'm no longer in a place where an African booty scratcher is a real thing or a funny thing or something that I want to use as an insult. It was, and there's also a time where right around the same time, uh, popular rap culture, which is I'm a b-boy, like I was in it. Um, I'm looking at that stuff, and they're teaching me to respect my own culture, and they're teaching me you can't disrespect Black women. You know, you have to do these things that are uplifting and making sure that you're given a certain respect and honor to where you come from. That changed the whole thing for me. So it really really outweighed the information I had gotten from you know, my dad knows guys back in the day, and even my current environment, which wasn't all on that same page.
I find that to be so incredible. It's like you were almost you were infused. It was like a full immersion
Mm-hmm.
almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sort of like a brainwashing immersion of
Mm-hmm.
how how to respect your own Black culture.
Yeah.
And that kind of changed a bit of the way that you thought previously, and then
Mm-hmm.
now it's like, what are you doing with your kids in this regard?
Well, so it's been an interesting ride because uh, if I'm being honest, I fed into the militancy of the early mid '90s. You know, you got the Rodney King thing. That was the George Floyd of our time. You know, so when those sort of things happened, I was angry. I was angry, and I really lacked any sort of perspective. I had like two white buddies, and you know, they were like white, really light skinned Black kids. You know, they didn't know anything about any of this either, and it wasn't really until I my study of God is really what kind of bridged this gap, because I started off like kind of in the middle, but in the middle because of ignorance. I didn't really know anything about Black or white culture. I was a kid. I knew being a kid. And once I learned all of this information about, you know, Europe, European countries dividing up Africa and taking all its riches, and chattel slavery, and the Willie Lynch letter, and racism in America, and you know who's bringing the guns into the Black community and the drugs. And once I learned those things, I was angry, and I was way on the other end of this, because I'm like, no, Black people are the right ones, and the white man is the devil. And it wasn't until I got an understanding of God where it started to be like, wait a minute, division doesn't seem to be God's way. It seems to be the case that, yeah, we have these differences, but there's some commonalities too. And it really wasn't until, like, once I got to that point, it really started to make sense to me that there's some universal stuff. And that really like has centered me more. So when I teach so my son is 16. He gets that if he's driving around, and he gets stopped by the police, he gets what this is. This isn't La La Land. This isn't a fairy tale. He has to respect the kind of world that we live in. He also understands that there are good black people, there are bad black people, there are good white people, there are bad white people. As far as race is concerned, it's really not a factor. Race is I was looking at Liz Lieba's article the other day, and she's making a point that race is really, it's a construct of our own minds. It's like, it's not biologically, we're not different. There's not a case where all white people want their kids to die, but I love my kid. It's like, no, we're all very similar in that way. So for him, we try to teach him this holistic sort of way: love and respect your culture, love and respect where you come from. And just like there are going to be black things that really piss you off and make you mad because of the fact that some of the stuff we do is just wrong and bad and bogus and ignorant, on the flip side of that, there are some very great things about black folks. So we try to give them this holistic idea and keep them God centered, so that it keeps them from taking on, I guess, what I would call the divisiveness of the current times of the world we live in.
That's beautiful. Kelly, you are taking us through a really deep introspective journey, because to be someone who grew up in the projects where African booty scratcher was an insult,
Yep.
to a
Yep.
point where you now moved into this militant style of Black
Mm-hmm.
pride, Black culture, we are the
Mm-hmm.
best, we are superior,
Yep.
and then having this spiritual awakening, this deep spiritual transformational awakening, to really see that, hey, you know what, we have more in common than we do have different.
Yep.
And to also embrace now passing this down to your son. This is something that is beyond incredible, and
Mm.
I'm just so glad that you're sharing this information with us today. Kelly, I know you are an expert in psychology, and I know that
Okay,
you
expert.
you
Okay.
you I know that you definitely help people to see things differently, and it's not
I
just
try,
out
yeah.
of your own experiences, it's also out of your training.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that really hit me a lot, which was really powerful, was when you said respect your own culture. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to talk a little bit more about that respect aspect, and for you to tie in your psychology background here as well. When we think of the division that does exist between Black cultures,
Mm.
the respect aspect of respecting yourself, respecting your culture first in order to respect others, I see this play out a lot. What can you share with our audience? If you had one thing to share, like what could you share with our audience in terms of moving themselves from disrespect to respect?
So the good thing is that's a universal thing. That's going to play out the same with men and women, with uh, black people of different backgrounds, of different cultures, of different regions. That's going to play out between races. It really becomes about self-awareness first. And one of the things that the emotional intelligence teaches us is that the more self-aware we are, the more we're able to like make a space and make a safe space for other people to have their differences. So if it's a case where I cannot remember this man's name, but he's a musician, and this guy goes and he actually meets with KKK members, and I'm looking at it, and he makes this point in his story where he talks about there's a there's a an ego trip that we're on, and if we let our ego and go a little bit, and we become a little bit more humble and stop thinking about what we deserve or what we're owed, we can actually see these are just people. Like, these are just people. It doesn't make them wicked. It doesn't make them the worst thing. Like, they're doing bad things. And some stuff we understand that we don't agree with. It's exactly like that in our own Black culture. Uh, Everyone comes from somewhere slightly different, and even if it's the case, I personally had a couple of issues when we're in Chicago. There's all of this rioting going on, and some of the stuff, like they're stealing drugs, and I have a lot of older friends who, they can't get medications they need to stay alive because people. And it's like, well, is this really based on George Floyd, or is this someone being, hey, I see the situation, I'm going to come up. I don't agree with that. I don't like that. I see people hurt over that. At the same time, because of the fact that the way that I put this into use is I say, I understand that this person who's doing this, they don't have any sort of problem with my older friend who doesn't get their meds. These people are going through something where they're frustrated. They see an opportunity to get, and it's been a long time since they've had a chance to get where they felt like things were fair. So it's like, hey, I'm going to strike out, even if it's in a place that or in a way that's wrong or unjustified. The real thing we have to do is try to make an attempt to bridge those gaps. So between cultures, between our own race, across the world, it's about, I'm not that important. I'm not that big a deal. My stuff isn't always right. Let me try to understand yours. Let me listen to your story. And through that, we can actually start finding that common ground.
Hmm. I want to pretend as though I'm that person who you grew up with, and I'm displaying what I hear you say is anger,
Hmm.
because I'm taking the opportunity to leverage my frustrations that I've been holding for a long time,
Hmm.
on a situation that may not justify or warrant the reaction that I'm doing. But you
Yeah.
know what? I feel like I need to be angry anyway. So Kelly, me, pretend that, and then this is not me, but I'm just saying, pretend
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that's me. I'm not interested in connection. I'm
Hmm.
angry. I'm frustrated. Um, how do you how do you even begin to connect with me to say, hey, you know what, you don't need to look at other Black cultures as inferior or negative.
Hmm.
How would you even take me on as a project? What would you do?
So ultimately, you're pretty much everybody in my family is what you're saying. Okay, I got you. So no, it's so here's the thing. It's a scriptural principle that says there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Mm,
The reality is that when someone has just stolen their big screen TV, you're probably not going to get them to be conscious enough to listen, to even be in a place where they can accept that information. So probably the best thing I could do, because if you're not in a coaching setting where someone's come to you to look for a solution, most people aren't there like mentally. So the best thing you can do if you're in that spot is be super casual. You know, I've done sales for probably 30 years almost. The reality is that the thing that people hate most about salesmen is that they're trying to sell stuff. But an advocate is much different. An advocate is still trying to get you to buy stuff, but they're on your side and they're trying to help. So if it's me and you and we're talking, first thing I say is, "Hey, how you doing, Monique?" You're, "Oh, hey, I'm good. Been a few days since I stole those TVs from those sons of guns, and I'm happy because I got this." And it's like, well, hey, you know what? I heard this thing about these breathing exercises. Check this out. Can you do this with me? Here, breathe in, hold it for a second, and then breathe out through your mouth, count to four. Like, man, can you feel that? Yeah, I feel it in my shoulders. There's a bit of relaxation. You do
yes.
that a few times, and now what happens is that you're getting more circulation to your brain. So the chances of your the chances of your defenses kicking up as fast are lower. You can be a little bit more reasonable. Like, what's crazy is that I I really enjoy the idea of Black people making a statement. Like, I gotta tell you though, I'm not sure if that statement really comes across. And it's like, well, if you're that person, you probably say, "Yeah, I mean, I feel you, but I mean, look, they killing Black folks all the time, so it's whatever. It is what it is." Like, yeah, yeah, you know what? That's true. Let me ask you though, do you think it would be the same if roles were reversed? If someone had done something to you because you did something wrong, would it make a difference to you if, like, whichever way they came at you to get back at you, or is it just, hey, you hit me, I shoot you? I mean, obviously, no, like they needs to be within reason. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I'd probably leave it right there because again, you can only you get or what is it called? Overload. You get like
Hmm.
cognitive overload if you're making someone go through this whole thing. And I have enough people who've been mad at me. Just happened to me last night when you're trying to push and you tell people stuff more and more, and after a while they're just like, fine, I don't care, I will go ahead and ride with no seatbelt, I hate you and your mama's stupid. And that is what you'll get. So if you come back a little bit later and like, man, you remember we did those breathing things, how you like that? Like, yeah, I'm gonna, and you do modeling, so
Mhm.
yeah, that feels great. And they all of a sudden start doing it too. And then you go back into, yeah, man, I was sitting there thinking about the other day about the TV thing, and you can pause it, engage where they're coming from, and slowly but surely you can actually help people to see the other side of the reasoning. I don't think there's any, like, outside of some sort of mind control, I don't think there's any psychological tricks you can play to take away people's choice. I always think about this. It doesn't really matter how much I agree or disagree with what you're doing. Ultimately, you have a God-given choice. And if God is going to let you choose, who the heck am I to take that away? So it's really more about reasoning, excuse me, and setting people up so that they can see all the factors that they need to make a better choice.
Mm. Kelly, 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 I see why you are the master
Okay.
sales psychologist, bringing out the inner child.
Right. That's right.
Bringing out the inner child here, because listen, even when you did that, you were so smooth when you did that breathing exercises. You didn't even wait for that response. Come on, do this with me. Before I knew it, I
Yeah,
was
you were doing
breathing
it.
in and out. I was breathing in and out. You were smooth with it. And what I love too is that you talk about this from a sales standpoint. So you brought into psychology, you brought into sales, and the
Mm,
fact that you say, you know what, be an advocate, but not only be an advocate, but be an advocate in bites. So
hmm
you can't just come and do a whole overload or overwhelm. You
Yeah.
have to be able to set it up so that people can win. You have to focus on reasoning and sort of developing that skill set so that
hmm
at the end of the day, it's all about that perspective shifting and sharing,
Yep.
if you will. So,
Can,
Kelly,
can
I
I?
know.
Well,
Sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Can I add this one piece because this is super important? A lot of this has to come. A lot of this comes down to what your why is, because in all reality, it's impossible for me to do that if I'm thinking about I need to get through this session to get to XYZ, or I need to sell you on this session so that you'll keep paying me. My why is this idea of love. And if you follow hashtag lead with love, just throwing it out there, you'll actually see all of these posts connected to this idea that what I want to do and my why has to do with expressing all of the things that equal up to love so that people can follow those as a model. Again, modeling. And what you
Modeling.
do is everything that I'm trying to do when it comes to my any of the choices I'm going to make, especially the ones that have to do with other people, is I want to lead with this idea of love. And love not in a la emotional sense. I mean love in the sense I want to give you the best thing I can give you at this point in time. uh and I don't want something back from me. I don't need anything back from me. And if that means giving you a listening ear, if that means giving you a swift kick in the butt, whatever that means, I want to give you that right now. And now, because you've experienced love, unconditional love, which is what most of us are lacking, when you go to your next choice that you have to make, you're just a little bit more likely to make that same choice, or at least you're better off to make that same choice with the next person, the next situation. And that's what BE consultant stands for. BE is for butterfly effect, because the reality is, if I start off with love and I give you just a little bit of love, now when you go to your next thing and you give somebody else a little bit and they give somebody else a little bit, the idea is the butterfly flapping his wings over in the Philippines or something starts a hurricane on the east coast of America. And that's what I'm hoping to do.
Awesome. Kelly, before we start to wrap up, I have one
hmm
one final question. You just said something that most of us are lacking love.
hmm
What do you mean by that?
Oh man, this is the basis of everything I'm doing. Um, the the and this is one of those Judeo-Christian Bible principles of God is love. God is love, and the way that you serve that love is by being obedient to God. And not to get too biblical on everyone here, but the scriptures say that the apostles asked Jesus, "Hey, what's the most important commandment? And he said to love your God with all your heart and soul, to love your God with everything, right? And the Bible explains to us that that means doing what he would do. What did he do? He gave us his best in his son. So I want to give everybody my best when it comes to giving them my love. And then the Bible goes on to say, what's the second thing? And he said to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you think about it, none of us are denying ourselves food and drink. And unless we're going through something really bad, our every inkling is to serve ourselves and better ourselves and to eat and to live, to survive. And that means do that for you and everyone else, because everyone is my neighbor. So if you look at the idea, the tenets that are put together there, it's basically it's love God in the sense that you love what he loves, which he loved us. So I got to love everybody. So that's why I can no longer be a black nationalist, because I got to love everybody, because everybody has that same value to God. And then Jesus is backing that up saying, "Hey, love your neighbor." So in that sense, that is the basis of my practice. So I work with some clients for free. If you can pay, I really do try to get paid for it. But I work with some people for free because if there's a case there where I can give you this thing because you need this thing, there's no way I can say because of money I can't. You know, I
Well,
so
I will say it
mm,
for you, Kelly. I will say it
yes,
for you. Okay. I will say it for you.
say it.
You said there's no way you can say you can't do it. I will say it for
I can't do
you.
it.
Yes. But no, seriously, this has really been really eye-opening, very powerful. I am so grateful for the insights and the nuggets that you've shared today. And I just want to let our audience capture the thoughts and the summaries that came out of this conversation that I heard. I
Hmm.
mean, I definitely heard from the beginning. I mean, if Kelly can transform, if Kelly can transform and give us
Yep.
a model, we are setting ourselves up for success. To be able to come from a background and a place where insults were fun, insults were great, insults were just the norm between Black
Hmm.
cultures,
Hmm.
to now being a man who is so active and proactive and helping to form that bridge between Black cultures,
Yep.
starting with ourselves. That is transformative. The biggest point here was really around education, self-awareness, and learning
Mm,
how to be a family, learning how to have a respect for your culture,
that's right.
learning how to be an advocate, but not just an advocate, but being an advocate in bites, so that you focus on reasoning and you're not trying to focus on convincing somebody, but really paying attention to the
Hmm.
timing that you're giving and you're talking when you're trying to help someone see things in a different way. I love the aspect where you talked about, having no psychological tricks that can take away a person's choice. That
Hmm.
deserves repeating over and over and over. No matter what you do not have a magic wand. You don't have a
Right.
psychological mojo trick to be able to remove someone's choice. But
That's right.
if you approach it strategically, being an advocate, operating in love, you can form that bridge towards other cultures. You can form that bridge in your
Hmm.
family and towards others. So, Kelly, any last comments or final words that you'd like to share for our audience?
Um, boy, uh, I guess if I had to say anything, I would say everything that we talked about starts with looking inside first. Um, I'm a coach and I coach about success, and success, everyone usually goes to the stuff outside, but honestly, there is no measure of success until you look in first. So, whether it's through me, another coach, or your own research, really try to become more self-aware. It really changes the trajectory of your life and pretty much everything in it, and how you affect other people. It's a really big piece.
Yes, incredible. And Kelly, where can they find you if they want to find you online? Where can they find you?
Alrighty, so I am on LinkedIn. I am under Kelly Blackmon, and you'll see there's a guy who looks just like the picture that you'll see on this podcast. It's me. You can also go to YouTube. My channel is How to Win at Everything, and I'm sure that Monique would drop all of the links in there for this stuff. Also on LinkedIn, you can actually follow the How to Win at Everything channel. You'll see every time there's a new show. I have a weekly live show that comes on and we discuss this kind of thing. Excuse me.
Awesome. Kelly, it's been incredible. Thank you for coming on the show. You guys, this is your conclusion of another episode of the Bridge to You podcast with Monique Russell. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and share. You can find this on Apple iTunes, my website, clairecommunicationsolutions.com. And until next time, be well.
Woohoo!
Thanks for listening to the Bridge to You podcast. Visit clairecommunicationsolutions.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, Monique Russell, or Instagram @Clear Communication Coach.